And we are live. Good afternoon, Miss LeTonya Moore. Thank you very much for taking up the challenge when, I asked for women who would like to join me in an interview of, just demonstrating where when women come together, we can make an impact and we can, be able to spread more of this women empowerment and bringing women closer together to be able to change the status quo, right? That's definitely what we're on right now. It's been part of the narrative for years of women just trying to break through the barriers that have been set for ourselves and, well, set by society on us. And we've been doing it like one person at a time. And I think it's fitting now that we change that from being just one of us being in a room to a room with just women across the board and just having more numbers in those rooms and women having the voice, and the confidence that they need to just show up, because we need to show up. When we are called to action, we need to show up at all times. So thank you very much for, accepting the challenge and of course, showing up to share your story, which I think is very important because it's how we bridge the gap, it's how we connect and how we get to know each other better. So I'm not going to tell your story. I would like you to share your story outside of, we've gone through just an impressive bio that you have from being a brand strategist, a brand business coach, a lawyer. Just tell me more about you. Like, how are you making an impact and how were you able to do all of this? Because it's not easy sometimes. We as women take on so many different roles, but how have you been doing it?
Wow, that's definitely a loaded question. I'll say, first of all, thank you so much for opening your platform, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it more than you know. I think for me, it just came a time where I had to choose, right? I had to
Yep.
choose if I had to just really ask the question or answer the question, am I going to continue to work in an environment that really is unfulfilling?
Yeah.
It wasn't that I wasn't successful. It wasn't that I was necessarily being treated any type of way that I didn't want to be treated.
Okay.
It really was more about, am I going to pursue what I know is my passion? And for me, my passion was less into like traditional law. Case comes through the door, you do case, you win case, client leave,
Yeah.
right? To a more substantive part of really working alongside the clients, helping them to reach their growth goals, helping them to increase their market share or whatever their goals were. Because as a litigator, technically, like that's what you do, right? The client comes in and they have an objective. Either they're being sued or they are suing somebody. For me, I did a lot of defense work. So
Okay.
I'm a former United States government attorney. And so, of course, we know that's one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer, definitely here in the United States, possibly in the world. And so being on the defense side is a little bit different because you have all the information,
Yeah.
right? And so you know a lot of things and you're able to do a lot of things. But on the backside, what I learned was a lot of regulatory things
Okay.
and understanding like law, rule, regulation, understanding like the intersections between how does it work from consumer to government and government to consumer, because you had to know it back and forth,
Yep.
because this is who I have to defend. And so because I have to defend it, I need to know the front end of the back end.
Yeah.
And I give you guys that backdrop just to say, so for me, I realized that component of it, though, was like what gave me life. What gave me life was putting together the strategies. I had gotten like to the point I was known, like if someone had a difficult case that they felt like, okay, what's another angle? They would just say, LeTonya, I need you to help me look at my litigation strategy. Is there something I'm missing? Can you look over this? And so after a while, I had gained a reputation of being a person that people would come to when they were trying to figure out a different strategy. Again, I realized like I was like, I loved that. That was my passion. working with people to find another perspective, working with them to find another way to reach their goals. And so after a while, I was like, I really just want to do this. I want to be able to do it, though, in a way that's going to help people achieve their goals and help people realize their dreams. And so it just got to the point where there was just so much pressure that I said, you know what, I'm going to push forth and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to bring my legal expertise and bring my legal background to help clients achieve their goals.
Oh, that's awesome. Just listening to that, I'm like, I can see the passion and the excitement that you have for it. And I think that's where most of us get stuck into places that we don't necessarily like, because we can't connect what we're passionate with what we're doing, right? We're thinking that, okay, get up in the mornings, this is just a job. But there are things within us that really ignites us. Like, there's a fire, whether or not it's one of the things, just personally on my side, one of the things that I just like really sat down and realized that I declared myself, I've always said, because I'm the eldest for 5 girls, and I've always said, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I don't have patience. I cannot do this. But when I look at my professional life, one of the things that I enjoyed the most was training new staff members or training anyone in software or anything like that. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I said I wasn't a teacher, right? So I think it's so important that when we do find, something that we love and we're passionate about, that we do explore it a little bit more, because life is about living, right? And not necessarily just going through the process. Is about finding that joy. So that is extremely awesome that you were able to do that with everything else that was happening, because sometimes we're not able to make that pivot. So one of the things that I was thinking as well, because I saw your story, you've shared your story, and just looking at your journey, it's like we have to talk about confidence, because it takes a lot of confidence to say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to leave my job, or I'm going to, just leave whatever it is behind, and I'm going to go on this road by myself. Because we all know entrepreneurial, the journey is the one-man show. Even if you have a team, right? You're just trotting down there and everything is coming out from left field and you're dealing with that. But it takes a lot of confidence and courage to be able to explore that. And that's something I wanted to ask you about, like, share your entrepreneurial journey with us, and also what would have given you the confidence to be able to make that leap. And for those women that are struggling with, confidence, because some of us are not naturally gifted with it. We have to fake it until we make it. We have to, do whatever is necessary to be able to portray or exude that level of confidence. When it comes to confidence on your end, how would what would you have done to develop that level of confidence, and what advice would you share with women who are currently struggling with that?
I think partially for me is that the confidence, I think, just comes from how sure are you in yourself. Yeah. And if you're not sure of yourself, you really have to work back to figure out, where does that come from? Because I don't think that we build our own confidence. I think that confidence, at least initially, is something that's almost bred into us. Yeah. And so I know, like very, very young, my father would always ask us, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And no matter what you said, he was like, why? Like, you always had to convince him that this is what you wanted to do. And so not really understanding, that was really building confidence, so that when someone else would ask us things, we could say, well, this is what it is, and be, flat-footed and broad-shouldered and saying it. So I think that for those of us that find ourselves being in a position where there is a lack of confidence, I believe there's always a root to that. And we have to deal with, what's the root cause? Where is that coming from? Why am I unsure when I know that I have the knowledge, skills, and abilities? What is it that I'm not so sure about? And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's not really the confidence in our skills, because a lot of people that have these burning desires are people that are exceptionally successful at their jobs, right? They make their companies or save their companies millions of dollars. they're very effective supervisor, right? That, let's say that, you know, these folks are people that other people like to work with. They're able to inspire, they're able to motivate. And so part of it, I think it's a byproduct of fear, right? Because the first thing is,
Yeah.
am I going to be able to
Do this
provide for
for
my
myself.
family?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely. Right.
Exactly.
We start thinking about those things. Well, what about healthcare? Who are we going to have health insurance? Like, we start to think about all of those things that really go to life's basic needs, right?
Yeah.
Food, shelter, clothing, safety, all of those things. We start to think about that. And so the question then becomes, what do you do? And so to kind of move to your next step, one of the things now, I did not do this, which is why I posted in my journey, like, it was really hard. So that's why I'm telling you guys to do this. Once you know that your goal and your vision would really be to do your business full time and not have this 9 to 5 job, which it doesn't, it's not a bad thing if you do,
Of course.
then you have to really ask yourself, what do I need to transition?
Yeah.
Right? What will I need to transition? What does it look like? Not just money, because it's not just the financial part of it. There's also these other parts of it. How am I going to deal with the questions about, at least for me, like, why would you leave that good government job where, you know, you're making cushy 6 figures, right? You go to work, you come home, like, they're, you know, if you're not having to have any hearings or anything like that, like, you really can do whatever you want to do. Why would you leave that job to go and do this, which isn't as prestigious? And so you have to be prepared for the mental side of it.
Yeah.
You have to be fully prepared for all of that. And so this is why I always talk with people. And, you know, of course, the people that we coach and train with, we literally are almost exclusively for people that are not already doing their business full time. We are dealing with the people that are at that stage, right?
Exactly.
They're like, this is my transition plan. And so just having that support and being able to go along with them to say, okay, so one of the things that you're concerned with is healthcare. So how much will you need to take care of healthcare for you and your family for a year? What will that look like financially? What will that look like? Are you able to stay with your same doctor? So what we do is we work with people on developing a transition plan so that when they put in that 2 weeks or that 30 days notice, they are already fully prepared to walk out of the door of the company that they're working for and walk right into the door of full-time entrepreneurship.
Oh no, that's amazing. But it's one of the things I've realized from my own journey, because we have like a lot of women who are thinking about making this journey, you know, thinking about starting a business or just doing life differently from what they're, you know, currently doing because they're not happy with it. But we sit down with pen and paper and we have this checkbox system. It's like, okay, 1 check, 2 check. And when we look at that checklist, if we don't have all the boxes checked, then we will stop. It's like, no, I can't do that. But I think sometimes, at least from what I've learned for myself, is that you have to make a move. You go through that process and you know all the things that you want, and you know that, okay, you're not just getting up on a whim and say, okay, you know, I'm going to quit my job and just like tomorrow morning you're like, oh, so how am I going to do this business thing, right? It has to be a process and a system in place, obviously. But what would you say to those women who are going through the checklist? And, you know, instead of actually taking an action, because we can plan and we can write everything down. But if we don't take action, if we don't make that first move, then we're not doing anything differently. We're living in the same lie. We're feeling the same discomfort and everything like that. What would you say to those women who are stuck in that checklist zone instead of the action zone? What would you say? What advice would you give to them based on your journey that you've had?
Don't get stuck with analysis paralysis, because the longer you plan, the less, I mean, quite frankly, the longer you're going to have to continue to plan.
Yes.
Because now, especially with COVID, we are in a rapid moving system, right? Because now it's a lot of pressure being applied. And so if you think about it, you're almost in flight mode. And when you're in the fight or the flight mode, right? When you're in either one of those, you do not have time to plan. You just need to take action. You just need to implement. And so the question really is, where are you? Right? Are you in comfort zone? Even though, yes, you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. You do have to have a plan, right? You definitely have to have a plan. But I think that to speak to what you're saying, it's one thing to have a plan, it's one thing to be paralyzed in planning. If
Exactly.
it's like, oh, well, I have to do this before I can start, and I have to do this before I can start. And then by the time you're done and you think that you're ready, now there's a new way of doing it because you took so long trying to start. One of the things that I realized as a business mentor and a business consultant is that the market will actually let you know what they need. When you create a system and you try to drop people in that system, you don't get the results that you typically want.
That is,
And I'm saying that because it happens the same way when we're looking at actually stepping out into that business. We make lots of plans. Nothing goes as planned,
yep,
right? Nothing goes as
that is
planned.
so
And
true.
because we were stuck with that plan, we're unable to pivot. And then we say, well, this doesn't work. And I knew that it wasn't going to work, and I shouldn't have left my job. No, it's because you spent way too much time planning and not enough time implementing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I know that feeling all too well. It's just doing that checklist, like, oh, I'm not there as yet. Oh, I need to wait until I get this. And it's like, you know what? You get up and you like take action, get about it. Do go on with the business of going on and stop, not being stuck in that place. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I can't tell you. I think just being able to hear your story and hear you share your perspective has been amazing. And one of the things that, like, for me, I always think about women and power. And we have this notion, or in the past, our grandparents and older folks taught us that, women and power sometimes don't go together, right? And there's some women who thought that in terms in for them to take on leadership role and to have power, they had to take on certain persona and personalities of the male counterparts. How do you define, like, women in power? How do you look at that? And have you ever had any situation where you felt as though, in order to lead a team, of whether or not it's a team that consists completely male, that you had to take on some male personalities? And did you feel as though you lost some of who you were as as a woman? And yeah, how would you define that? What was that like?
I think for me, it was less about feeling that I needed to take on a male persona per se versus not being able to be completely myself.
Yeah.
I believe authenticity is very important. I think that as women, we are wired differently.
Yeah.
We are wired to multitask and think of contingencies. I don't know any woman, I don't care how quote unquote aggressive she may come across or how quote soft she may come across. One of the things that we have in common is being able to multitask and think about multiple contingencies. This is why, you have a woman that can cook dinner, do homework,
Yeah.
take care, breastfeed the baby, all while doing some job, some remote job, and do it all effectively
Exactly.
and pull everything together. She knows everybody's schedule in the house. She know who gets up and who needs what
Uh-huh.
and all of that. And so we're wired to think of a lot of contingencies. And so from a strategic standpoint, that is a huge quality, or a very good quality, that an asset that women have. And I think that we are actually boxed more into personality. Like, let me see how she acts. How does she present herself? Is she feminine enough? Oh my gosh, she's acting like a man. I don't really think that. I think that for me, I never had to feel like I acted like a man or I had to act like a man, but I definitely had to make sure that my demeanor conveyed that I was definitely in charge, not in control, but in charge.
Yeah.
And I think that what was helpful for me is treating my employees with compassion. I took a lot of, and still do, even with my coaching clients for sure, is understanding each individual person and what do they value, what's important to them. Because one of the first things I realized is that in order to meet this goal, everybody has to work at optimal level. And
Exactly.
so that includes me. And so because of that, I had to take those roles on. I mean, I had to take some time to get to know my employees, to know like who can I put where. I'm saying that to say, unfortunately, men don't think things through that way, right? Because they're not wired necessarily that way. Not to say that they're not strategic thinkers, but they don't think on the emotional level
Yep.
oftentimes, right? They're definitely thinking on the logical, rational, and sort of what makes sense for the outcome versus what makes sense for the person so that we can get the outcomes that we want.
That is true, and that's something I think I want to make clear as well. It's not that we are saying that men don't do the work or anything like that, but it's just more of perspective from from being a woman, where you find that there are instances where women, whether or not it's the tech industry, and everyone shows up with, because it's all male, and everyone is showing up with the jeans and the t-shirt, and so you think that you have to do that as well, because if you show up in a pink shirt or a pink dress, it's like, oh wow, you're being so soft, and there's that perception that come across. And there are like a lot of women within those industries think that they have to mimic instead of being themselves and being as authentic and showing up and making those strategic moves to be able to get the positions and really command that respect. Because you don't have to be, it doesn't matter if you're working in a male industry as well. It's just overall, you don't have to become anyone else, because as it says, your superpower is being you, right? There's no one else like you. So I think that's amazing advice as well. So let's get to, we're looking at the impact that women has been making for centuries now. We eventually were able to, I mean, it's happening around the world in different places, but in the US, we're able to, for the first time ever, we have, a Black female, she's Asian as well, vice president of the United States. And so there's so many women that looking at this as an inspiration as to the impact that they can make themselves. How do you see us as women changing the world going forward? And in your perspective as well, in terms of what you're doing, how do you intend to make an impact to be able to change it from being one in the room to just, it becomes a norm? We're no longer being called the first in anything, but it's, LeTonya Moore was, just, she's now the CEO of this multi-million-dollar company instead of she is the first, so in terms of leadership and impact, what do you suggest, that looking at where we can go going forward from now?
Honestly, I think that women have always been impacting the world. I think what we're seeing is an acknowledgement of it.
Yes.
What we are seeing is the admission of the female, the woman being as valuable in these positions and as capable, right? Not just valuable, but as capable in these positions as men. That is a shift. And so I don't think that women are changing, really, to be honest with you. I don't think, because I think we always knew we could do it. I think we always knew that we should. I think now people are acknowledging it, and women are being given opportunities that they were not given before. Not that they did not have the capabilities to be successful.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we've always had the capability.
Absolutely.
I think what has happened right now, there are a lot of women who, we have the capability and we want to do it, but at the same time, we're like, oh, we'll never get it. Because there are those women, there's some of us that are aggressive. We're going to go after what we want. It doesn't matter how many times we were told no, it doesn't matter how many times we stumble, we'll keep going. But there are those women that, because we're talking to the women that need that extra push, that need that extra encouragement. For those women that are standing by and you're like, no, sis, you can make an impact. You can change the world. Those are the ones that we're talking to get them to really say, hey, because we have the strong ones, but we have so many that, still doubt themselves, that we need to bring them as well along on the journey. And the more, women that we can bring along the journey, the more, impact that we can make. So I think that's when I asked that question, that's where I was going with that. It's like, how can we get the women that are standing in the back waiting for everything on the checklist to work, or, not, lack that confidence to really show up to say, hey, sis, let's go. Let's go. Whatever it is that you want to do, now is the time. It doesn't matter if no one acknowledges you, but just show up and, take action, because that's ultimately what I'm encouraging women to do, is to take action, right? Take action, be
Yeah.
present, be known. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say as far as that goes is we have to make room.
Yes.
Right? There are some of us that are trailblazers,
Yeah.
right? There are literally some of us that's like, okay, there's no path, so I will create one.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you have that group. Then you have the group that says, look, someone has forged the path, so I'm going to go down this path.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. You have some that says, well, there's a path there, but I'm not quite sure that I should go down that path. And so what I would say to that person, right, is a couple of things. You have to ask yourself how great it would be if you go down that path. Because the reality of things is where you are is not where you want to be. Exactly. And so you have to make the decision to walk. Again, we can make room. We can invite. I recently did a masterclass where one of the concepts, and this is also a concept that we teach around as well, is creating a table, right? And I would always say that for me, this whole journey of making impact, this whole journey of growing our businesses and growing our brands is like a potluck dinner, right? Where you bring your best dish to the table, but we all eat. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, if you have a dish, right, and it is your best dish, then you need to connect with the host that's going to invite you to bring your dish to the table, right? So that we can all eat. And that's for the person in the back. That's for the person that's the trailblazer, because every table is not a table where you need to eat. Yes. Right. And you do have to sit back. Every trail is not the trail that you need to go down. So sometimes it is a good idea to plan. However, you need to watch, you need to evaluate, not saying that you're just standing on the porch because you're afraid to step off, but just saying you do need to evaluate. You do need to say, okay, who am I connecting myself with? Yeah. What does that mean? You can't just look at the shiny objects. I always talk about stop following the shiny objects, because what happens is you're going to be stuck on a trail and you're going to be lost, because you're going to have no clue, because no one's going to be supporting you. And so I think that what I would say to the person who is the trailblazer, those of us that are impacting, clear some seats at the table for our sisters that may not be as assertive, right? They may not be as confident, and give them the room and the space and the safe space to grow into that confidence without shaming them. So that would be my advice kind of moving forward. But it takes a while to find that and build that trust, because everyone's just not going to be soft. They're not going to be caring. And so you really have to take the time to evaluate who you're sitting with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. I absolutely love that. That's a great way to end, this conversation, which I think has been absolutely amazing. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, wait a minute, this was supposed to be 15 minutes. We just went 45. We just spent 45 minutes. I know this, this is sometimes when the energy goes and you just flow with it. And, I just appreciate you being on this conversation with me. It's been absolutely amazing. And, as I said, and I've been saying all this time, is that, now is the time for those of us who are really trying to make a mark on the world, trying to change the narrative of, how society and how the world view us, to really step up and make an impact, really step up and take action in whatever is it we want to do. It doesn't necessarily has to be, where you pursue an entrepreneurial journey. It could be you being a mentor, or you just creating spaces at a table, as you said, and inviting women who are looking to be change makers. So, thank you very much, LeTonya. This conversation was absolutely amazing. I think if we don't have a stop clock, we wouldn't stop. So, so thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and it's been absolutely amazing connecting with you. Looking forward to keeping the conversation going. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me.
No problem.